Welcome to Beijing for the 15th edition of the IAAF World Athletics Championships. What a superb 9 days we have in prospect, and it all kick-starts right now in the beautiful early morning sunshine with a men's marathon. And what a race this could be. The current world record holder, the former world record holder, against the defending champion and the Olympic champion. Two Kenyans up against Stephen Kipritich, the toast of Uganda when he took the Olympic title. And we have a host of other athletes who, in these tough conditions, may feel this is an opportunity to get in the mix. I'm Rob Walker and I'm joined by Steve Ovett, and we cannot wait for this race to start. Dennis Kimeto with that electrifying world record when he won in Berlin, 2:02.57. Abel Karui's had a couple of victories here, wonderful major championship performer. Now we get a better glimpse of the course. It's a point-to-point, as Steve was saying, past the 5 kilometre stage, heading up towards the Dayasutu State Guest House, and then that long road north, past the Kunyu River. That's getting up towards the halfway stage. They then take a right-hand turn past Hadian Park, a little double back, and I wonder at what stage the leading contenders will make their break for glory. You sense perhaps that won't happen until quite close towards the end in these conditions. And bit by bit they make their way back towards this magnificent Olympic Park, which still in many regards looks as good as it did back in 2008 when the eyes of the world descended on Beijing and the Bird's Nest Stadium. So a full look at the lineup. Edwin Kemboi representing Austria, born in Kenya. There are a few Kenyans representing other nations. Germe Gebrselassie is an interesting athlete, still only 19 years of age. Came 6th in Chicago, 7th in the world half last year. Lelisa Desisa of Ethiopia, he picked up the silver medal 2 years ago. Great performance from him. Yamane Sege, one of the other Ethiopians, only just missed the bronze 6 years ago in Berlin. And there's Kimeto and Kipsang, one world record holder, one former world record holder, and their compatriot Mark Correa had a brilliant run in Paris earlier this year, sub 2:06.
Well, that's a massively strong Kenyan contingent. It'd be interesting to see whether they run as a team or whether they just wait and see what the other athletes are doing, whether the other Ethiopians or any of the other teams can put a performance in which is going to break that trio up, because that's the main contenders, I think, for the finish.
Very good quartet from Uganda. Abraham Kapimo, bronze medalist in the Commonwealth Games. And Stephen Kipritich, of course, the big performer on the main stage. Cuthbert Nyasango hasn't done anything this season, the athlete from Zimbabwe, but he's a good performer on his day. 7th in the Olympics in London and 16th back in 2011 in Daegu. Bahanu Lemi won Dubai earlier this year, 2:05.28.
Yeah, he wins most of his races, actually. He's one to look forward to, a young athlete. So this field is really quite interesting because it's got the experience and also the young contenders coming through. So I think we'll have to wait maybe for the halfway point, as you said, before anything develops really, Rob. But a quality field nonetheless, it really is.
It is. This confirmation of Lemi's time. Only 20 years of age. Amazing. We've just been talking about Gebrselassie, the Eritrean, at 19. It's amazing that these athletes are coming through with such stamina at such a young age. There's Desisa, who picked up the silver 2 years ago. Very experienced performer. Won Boston earlier this year. He's the 6th fastest athlete in the world this year.
Messel just beside him there. He was the silver medal in the world team half marathon back in 2010. So, as I say, almost every athlete here in this front row is a contender.
And there's Wilson Kipsang wearing Kipratic, former world record holder. What a list of accolades. Double London winner, double Frankfurt winner. He's won New York. He's the 3rd fastest athlete in history, and he's the 2nd fastest athlete in the world this year. Only Eliud Kipchoge has gone quicker. That was when he beat him in the London Marathon back in April. Great day for Xian Guan, one of the Chinese competitors. He's joined by Hassi Muhan. They've got respective bests of 2:16.24 and 2:14.26. Both personal bests set this season en route to booking their place in their national team on home territory. So a massive day for them. And hopefully, as the morning progresses, they'll be getting roared on by a growing crowd. Saturday morning, no one's in work today. Well, hopefully, most of the city anyway. And they'll be out on the streets of Beijing, ready to cheer these athletes on. What a race in prospect. We have 9 scintillating days for you here in Beijing. And it all starts right here, right now, with a stellar men's marathon.
Athletes now, nervous moments just before the start of a major race. Officials just clearing now away from the start gate. I always wonder why they have to put their feet just behind the line when they've got over 42k to go, but that's the official stance on these things. And as Rob said, we've got the marathon this morning to start the proceedings today, and then the fantastic 10,000 metres on the track to finish today. So what a great day to start these World Championships.
The last few seconds, as Steve said, must be agony. They'll be desperate to get going. We've only been here for 4 days and we've been desperate for the World Championships to start.
There's that fantastic rail record. 2 hours, 2:57. I don't think we're going to get anything like that today, but it's going to be a tough race.
And at last, the 2015 IAAF World Athletics Championships are underway. Couple of fallers there towards the back of the field. The beginning of a long, tough journey. It's already warm. Local time just gone 7:30 in the morning. Whoever takes the first gold medal of these championships will really have to earn it the hard way.
You can see the Kenyans now moving to the front there. Kimeto, Kipsang, just moving ahead of the field, just easing their way through. I think the nervous tension just before the start gives a little bit of a push, I suppose, to get your legs moving as fast, straight away as the gun goes. But they're easing to their rhythm. And I think the other athletes are quite happy, really, to see the favourites out in front, just to key off them, I think, more than anything else.
Well, interesting to think back to Sami Wanjiru, tragically, the late Sami Wanjiru, who produced a sparkling sub-207 performance in not too dissimilar conditions to this, to take the Olympic title back in 2008. And I wonder whether any of these 3 Kenyans will be feeling bold enough and brave enough to go for a pace such as that when it is pretty stifling already. That's Mark Correa. I watched him win in Paris earlier this year, inside 2:06. That was his lifetime best. He's not as well known as the other 2 Kenyans, but certainly he'll be feeling pretty confident, and he's more than earned his place in the Kenyan lineup for these championships as a result of that superb win in the French capital back in April. Brazilians just making their presence felt at the front of the field. We've got Solonai da Silva, who was 6th in Milan, Gilberto Lopez and Edmilson Santana. And we did have Wilson Kipsang and Dennis Kimeto at the front. They're quite happy to let the likes of Santana just do the pacemaking. Just a quick footnote here, Bat Ochia, who you can just see in the back of shot. I was just reading his stats yesterday. He's in good form. He's run 44 major marathons. He was 3rd in Fukuoka in December, 3rd in Otsu. So he's well used to performing in Japan, which means he's comfortable in tough conditions. Now, he's only got I say only, in comparison to the likes of Kimeto with a 2:02.57. Batochir has a lifetime best of 2:08.50, but it's not completely beyond the bounds of possibility that an athlete like him could get in amongst the mix if he does have a particular strength of competing and thriving in tough conditions. And there he is, just in the middle of the shot there, representing Mongolia.
I think that's a good point. I think in essence what we're looking at here is not going to be anywhere near the world record, but it'd be a time around about the I think around about the 2:8.27 sort of mark. And if that's the case, then a lot of these athletes can perform at that level. It's whether they can perform at that level in these conditions, which is the significant factor I think that's going to be bearing on this race over the last half.
Quick glimpse of Jeffrey Eggleston. He's got a best of just inside 2:11. He was just disappearing off shot there. Some magnificent sights to be taken in on this course. Perhaps those competing in the mass participation side of this event will have more time to enjoy the surroundings.
A long lead up there, and they're coming towards the Temple of Heaven now, which is another major tourist attraction in Beijing. Athletes just echeloning their way round this tight left-hand bend.
Now, Steve, here's a question for you. We've got the mass participation race with the yellow T-shirts, and I think that's who we've got at the front there, maybe just having a little bold bid for glory for his 45 seconds of television coverage. And it did look as though the Kenyans were beginning to close him down there, but quite interesting to see one or two of those taking part in the masses. There he is, 3:7.62. We don't have a full biography on him just yet, but we'll try and find something out if he's there at 25 miles. Steve Ovett rather thinks he may have had his moment of glory by the time the Bird's Nest Stadium veers into sight.
You never know. If he's there at the finish, we could have a new superstar in our making, but I don't think so. But he's doing a good job, though. He's pacemaking for the first, what is it, maybe a kilometre of the marathon.
Do you think he's trying to run a 1 mile PB?
Well, there's the Temple of Heaven, as I said. Magnificent scenery on this course today. And that's just literally about a K or so up the road from the start.
Well, our volunteer pacemaker is still going strong.
As I said, it looks like a fairly cautious start from most of these athletes, and I'm not surprised. As I said, the temperatures will be even creeping up from that 30 degrees or so that we had at the start, and as they go into the city itself, it's been pretty warm for the last 4 or 5 days, so there's no relent from this heat overnight. So the tarmac and the city itself acts like a major, almost radiator, radiating the heat back on these athletes. You can see a little bit of shade there as they go around some areas, but to be honest, it's almost open all the way through the marathon.
I just got a glimpse there of Adam Karmis, another one of the expatriated East Africans. He was chasing down our volunteer pacemaker. Now representing Bahrain, he's gone inside 2:08. And he was the man just behind our yellow T-shirt leader. There's where he should be running, in amongst the masses.
Actually, it's a good idea actually this time to incorporate a mass race behind the marathon itself, which is it's good. It keeps the interest from the locals, and obviously they will not be finishing in the Olympic Stadium itself. They will be diverted to another finishing area. But having said that, you can just see behind them there, there's thousands of athletes actually taking part.
Well, we're very much enjoying this race. Steve Ovett and myself, Rob Walker, and you'll be hearing quite a bit from a commentator alongside me. Very much looking forward to this and the rest of the track and field action over the 9 days we have ahead of us here in Beijing. So it's good morning to Peter Matthews.
Well, good morning, gentlemen. While you're concentrating on the race, just one little comment that I have while trying to look at the stats and so on, and the times that are coming through as well. And there's one non-starter, and the one non-starter is fairly significant because he's a gentleman who's going to be competing for the Southern Sudan, which is one of the new members of the IAF, because they've now got 214 nations rather around the world. So he is not competing, unfortunately. That would have been a debut for that country.
That's a real shame, although we will see another country having their debut at this edition of the World Championships. Kosovo will be represented. I think they have a competitor in the preliminary round of the men's 100 metres, which is coming up later on this morning here in the Bird's Nest Stadium. And still, 3:7.62 is piling on the pressure at the front. Steve Ovett shaking his head alongside me, incredulous that the athlete from the mass participation race is still there at the front going strong.
Well, maybe this is a good idea. Maybe the organisers have put in one of their top marathon runners in disguise to take the pace for the first half of the race. We never know, really. As I said, we've not much statistics on this guy, but he seems to be looking quite a decent runner.
And there was a first glimpse of the defending champion, the reigning Olympic champion, Stephen Kipritich, the Ugandan. Only Uganda's second Olympic champion after the legendary 400-metre hurdler John Akibui back in 1972. Kipratic was the toast of the East African nation, and he proved himself a worthy champion with a fantastic victory over De Sisa in the closing stages 2 years ago in Moscow, and he set a lifetime best in Tokyo earlier this year, 2:06.33. So the Ugandan, as we look at Batochir, Kipratic right up in that top group, and what odds on him regaining his world title?
Well, you're right about Batochir. He looks quite comfortable, doesn't he, in these conditions, and he's running well. He's not actually hiding behind the rest of the athletes. He's out in front there, and well, there you just see how fast these athletes are actually going, because at the moment it looks as if the pace is fairly casual, but even by most standards it's pretty quick.
But don't these kind of races really spark interest, Steve? Because it does give athletes, perhaps like Batochir, who aren't necessarily the quickest, it gives them an opportunity to really take a major medal, wherein in reality, on a 2:05, 2:06, he just can't compete at that level.
Well, I think there's two types of athletes, aren't there? There's the championship athlete, and that goes not just in the marathon races, but in the distance races, on the middle distance races on the track. The athletes that like the competition, that like to be able to have the man-to-man situation. Or there's the single race athlete, the athlete that likes the pace taken for them all the way through, as they are in most of the marathon races around the world. Berlin obviously in particular, where the pace is fast all the way, and some athletes can cope with that, others can't. So in this particular situation, obviously we've got a major race here where the pace isn't going to be significant for the first half, so it may suit a lot more athletes than it would do in a major city race, put it that way.
Well, major championship marathons have a dynamic all of their own. As Steve was saying, it's not about the times, it's about the gold, silver and bronze.
Well, you can see nothing has really happened to the athletes so far. They spread across the road. It's a massive road, isn't it, here? As they lead up almost to, I suppose, around about the 3 or 4K mark. Looking very relaxed are the Kenyans there in the red to the left of the picture.
They look like they're virtually jogging. Meucci and Pertil, two Italians. Meucci has a PB of 2:11.08. Pertil has gone under 2:10 on one occasion. 2:09.53, and it shows you what the pace here, because the two Italians are at the front and the Kenyans are all at a dawdle at this current pace, but there's a long way to go, and it's going to get much, much hotter before we get towards the business end of this race.
Well, Pertil, as you said, he's about a 2:14 man. He was 15th to the Olympics, so that's a sort of time that these guys like to run at, and that's the sort of reason why most of these athletes are together at the moment. Beautiful roads to run on, flat as a pancake here. Surrounded by mountains, Beijing, really, but the actual course itself, I don't think raises more than 10 or 15 metres or so throughout the whole of the 42K. Well, I've got a feeling this guy, as you said, has actually been put in by the organisers, because he looks like a reasonable runner. The fun runner, as it was, in the yellow, and I think he's going to do his best as he can to take these athletes through as far as he can.
Roman Proteus, Moldova, 2:12.31.
Yeah, Proteus didn't finish in the Olympics in 2012, but he's got a best time around about 2:12 again. That's maybe a little bit out of the reckoning when it comes to the last half if they push it on. Remember, most of the Kenyans can run a negative split here. They did that even when it's at the world record pace. And that's the hard way of running a marathon, isn't it? You run the first half reasonably relaxed, and then you really kick it in, and that really does the damage in most races, significant damage, and that can happen, obviously, I think, here today.
The Forbidden City. Anyone who's ever had the privilege of visiting China and taken a tour here, it really is a wonder to behold, and it looks magnificent in the early morning sunshine here. It's a vast city, Beijing, isn't it? It kind of takes your breath away, the scale.
Well, I think there's 27 million in terms of population in
That's
Beijing.
almost half the population of Great Britain in one city.
Yeah, well, I think it's almost 1.5 times the population of Australia in one city. So that just goes to show you the size and scale of what we're dealing with here. Sergei just moving ahead there, Ethiopian, moving to that almost in echelon behind this pacemaker at the moment. I think he's slowing down a little bit. They won't, I don't think, tolerate this too much. They'll start moving around it, but they're quite comfortable. It's nice to have someone just taking the lead.
Shows you the pace. Very, very comfortable. Hardly any of these athletes have become detached at these early stages. I think everyone respecting the context and the conditions. And this is what awaits you if you do come and take a tour of the Forbidden City.
Absolutely spectacular. Been there, and it's the sort of thing that anybody that comes to Beijing has got to go and see. It's just the size of it, I think, that is awe-inspiring. It really is.
It is one of the must-do tourist attractions, one of many here in this great city. So Yamane Tsege just missed out on a medal back in Berlin by 7 seconds, finished behind Tsege Kebede, a brilliant major championship performer. Diminutive Ethiopian took the bronze here behind Sami Wanjiru back in 2008. So there is Tsege, won the Rotterdam Marathon in 2012.
Well, that's the National Centre of Performing Arts there. One of the most things that I've been amazed at in Beijing is the spectacular architecture that you just have around every corner. Even the actual main airport we flew into, spectacular design, and it's really something quite special, really surprising for me anyway.
As is this stadium, still looking as good today as it did back in 2008. Jackson Kiprop there. Won the Mumbai Marathon 2 years ago. I made a note of him beforehand because he clearly likes the hot, sticky conditions if he can win in India. An athlete we saw just at the beginning of that pan across the front row, who we haven't spoken about too much so far. Shumi Jachasa, represented as we look at Kiprop and Stephen Kipritich there just on the left. Shumi Jachasa, formerly Ethiopian until 2013, fourth in Tokyo, second in Seoul. So another athlete who's quite comfortable in the tough, humid conditions. And it will surely be someone who has shown some ability in really, really difficult circumstances, who might give themselves a big opportunity here. Tsege Batochir, still flying the flag for Mongolia. And there is Dachasa.
5K mark reached in 16:06. So on pace, they're probably running around about the 2:15 mark, I think, something like that.
Yeah.
And it's starting to stretch out too. You can see now that they're not in that tight pack. And you can look at the conditions. I think just look at the reflection off of the road here. Temperatures, obviously, as I said before, in the 30s. And it's starting to have some little effect on most of the athletes.
Just the beginnings of an increase in pace there from Dachasa with Tsege. Batochir is also there. And Mark Correa just bridging the little gap that was beginning to develop between those lead three and the pack. And Correa in fourth place, the Kenyan, just taking a little look over his shoulder.
Well, they're all taking advantage of the feeding stations early on. I'm not surprised. It's going to be a big factor taking on the water in this race in these conditions.
You'd have to be crazy to miss out a drink station in weather like this.
Yeah, I mean, if you run marathons, and it's a known fact, you've got to take water on early as possible, because if you start trying to find the water later in the race when you're really thirsty, the danger's already there and the damage has been done. Chachasa's just slowly sipping his water ahead of the field. And
sharing them around between teammates, which is
you
good
have
to see.
Very difficult sometimes, obviously, to pick up the water, but there's the time at the 5K mark. Dachasa coming through there, and the gaps between a second or so it's not really much at the moment, but you get a feeling that they're starting to string out.
Yes, one by one they will begin to fall off the back, but very, very comfortable, very sensible pace, 2:15 at the early stages. All of the men in this lead group, or most of them, would be pretty comfortable at that kind of pace, but these conditions will start to produce casualties as the race goes on.
You can see even the Ethiopians are finding the heat here. They're pouring water over their head, and if they're feeling the heat, then you can bet your life most of the other athletes are probably suffering a little bit more.
Well, it's one thing we ought to remind ourselves of here, of course, anyone who's ever been for a holiday or done any training on the Rift Valley, either side of the Rift Valley, as Batochir just waves to some supporters. Anyone who's been to the Rift Valley will realise, of course, Kenyans and Ethiopians are used to hot weather, but those who operate up at the high altitude training centres in either country are not used to humid conditions. The weather is very hot up at those training bases, but it's a very dry heat. So these conditions are less than ideal, even for the East Africans. Look at this from Batochir.
Batochir's gone ahead, and it brought a flurry of clicks from the photographers there on the wagon, which is just in front of the runners. They've got the best position of everybody to follow this race. The photographers around the world getting their shots of the lead, and Batochir putting a bit of an effort here after that feeding station, but the others really, I think, are just letting him go a little bit. It's a bit cat and mouse, isn't it, really? You just let the mouse go just far enough before it becomes a danger, and then you pull them back in again. Batochir, though, he's a good athlete. As Rob said, he's used to these conditions. Maybe this is his way of deciding that, he's going to make it hard for everybody. Whether they let him go, whether he goes hard is another thing, though, isn't it?
Well, he's clearly feeling confident and feeling up for it. He's a prolific racer. I think I said earlier, he's run 44 major marathons, which is a huge number to try and contest at a very high level. But 2:08.50, third in Fukuoka in December, third in Otsu. So he's performed well in Japan.
Yeah, they've got to be careful. I mean, it's early days, 20 minutes into a marathon, but he's a comfortable little run-up, and he knows what he's doing. So they'll be watching carefully, won't they? There's the gap. Only about 10, 15 metres or so. The others quite happy looking at each other, spreading right across this massive road, leading up to, I think, the 10k mark, which will be around the state guest house.
Well, I remember the British former world record holder, Steve Jones, still the British record holder, saying that when you feel good in a marathon, no matter what stage of the race it is, you should go with it. It might not always pay off, but you should never leave yourself in any doubt. If you feel good, get to the front and have a go.
I wonder if they actually asked him whether it actually worked all the time, though. Or whether it worked 50% of the time. I'm not sure. We'll have to wait and see.
It's a brave, brave tactic to go at 20 minutes, but remember that magnificent women's marathon we had in Moscow 2 years ago. Edna Kiplagat won her second title,
yeah,
but Valerie Straneo, right, the Italian, went right to the front early on, and everyone was expecting her to fade away.
She just kept going.
And she almost ended up winning the race.
Yeah.
So,
well, I think this is what they're going to do, though. Look, they'll just watch him as much as they can. And the gap really, although it looks significant from a spectator's point of view, these men can literally haul that back within the space of, 2 or 3 minutes if they wanted to, really. They're just keeping their rhythm going. They're just conserving as much of their energy as possible with these conditions. They're not really worried too much. They quite like maybe the idea of the Batochir taking all the pressure at the moment of being at the front of the race, having all the attention on him, while all the others are just focusing on just getting through the half of the race with as least energy going out of them as they possibly can.
But it's just interesting, not necessarily for the gap he's got, but for the mentality he must have coming into this race, to put himself 15 or 20 metres clear of the current world record holder, the defending world champion, one of the greats, Wilson Kipsang. He's not bothered about reputation, taking a little look over his shoulder, and yes, at the moment, he still does have that 20-metre lead.
Well, there is a theory, and I'm not sure it's been mooted very often, but the case is that he's running at his naturally best optimum rhythm. If he was to slow down and run with the group, then his efficiency drops. So perhaps by running the way he is at the moment, he's getting the best out of himself physically, whereas the others are just holding back a little bit on their best performances, as it were. So is he doing the right thing or is he not doing the right thing? I mean, it's a question mark that's only going to be answered by results in the end. But having said that, he's obviously made the move. And even if they pull him back, he's the sort of man that can stay in the pack anyway.
And he's clearly feeling comfortable in these conditions, as he's proven with his decent performances in Japan over the last couple of years.
There's Da Silva of Brazil, just looking very cool in the sunshades. I think they've got a little bit of shade maybe on the edge of the road here, and he's hugging that as best he can.
Good athlete, Da Silva, 6th in Milan. He's got a best of 2:11.32, so that gives you an indication as to what the pace is amongst this group, because it was 2:15-ish as they came through the first 5k.
Well, he's just trying to move away, isn't he, from that group to try and catch up to the leader, but you can see now they're starting to sort of stretch out a little bit. The Kenyans now, look, this is a real surge as they start to make him. And when they do, when they start making a move, there we go. I think that might be Kipsang coming through there. When they do, you can see the others are just realising that the big danger is starting to make a move.
Well, that was fascinating, Steve, because it was one of the Kenyans, perhaps it was Kipsang, who moved up alongside De Silva, and as soon as he did that, one of the Ethiopians barged his way through the group to follow the move. So they're all aware of people like Batochia. They're happy to let him go 20 metres, 25 metres, but any one of the three Kenyans in this race, not quite the same.
Yeah, you can see they've caught back De Silva almost straight away. And De Silva's moving across now. Maybe it's another feeding station, I don't know. Yeah, there is there, just another water station coming in, so they're picking up the water here. Batochia, though, has gone straight past it at the moment. He's not taking on it anymore, so it's a mystery. Well, there was De Silva. He got pulled back pretty quickly. Tsesege, I think, was coming through. There's the three Ethiopians realising the danger was a move there by, I think it was Kipsang.
Yeah, Kipsang is up there. Three Ethiopians sharing drinks and sharing the workload. And then one of the other Kenyans, it's Mark Korea, who's come up alongside Wilson Kipsang with the current world record holder Dennis Kimeto a couple of places back down the race. All of the athletes there, apart from Batochia, making sure that they took extra water on at the stations. Dachasa still up in that group as well, the expatriated Ethiopian now flying the flag and doing so with some success for Bahrain.
Dachasa there, obviously, with his teammates just stretching out now from that water station across to the other side there. Really, I suppose, yeah, that's one of the misters that they're going to run through there to get a bit of relief from this intense heat at the moment. Some of them took advantage of it, some didn't. Checking their times, just seeing what sort of pace they're running at. We'll be coming up to the 10K, maybe in another 5 or so minutes as they run through the central sort of business area of the city. It's now, 8 o'clock in the morning, so not many people out at the moment, but probably a lot of people, perhaps millions, watching it on the television back home. But again, they're bunching up. The danger of that initial slight break from Batochia and De Silva has been soaked up, really, by the favourites as they come to the fore yet again.
Yeah, and the three Kenyans up in that group. Good to see the Eritreans there, not just Germe Gebri Selassie, but Emmanuel Messel, fourth in Warsaw. Good athlete. But Dachasa, Tsege, Kimeto, Kipsang, Korea, all the big names we would expect to feature are right there and leading them at the moment. Shumi Dachasa won the Arab Championships half marathon earlier this year. He won Hamburg last year. He's got a national record for his adopted country, 2:06.43, 2:07.20 this season. He's good in humidity. He's got great pedigree. And is this an opportunity for Shumi Dachasa to get Bahrain on the podium and show his former compatriots just what he's got? But you're quite right, Steve. It's bunching again. And after that little stretch of the legs from the Mongolian and the Brazilian, they are right back together as a sizable group once more.
Yeah, interesting though, Bahrain has got, in terms of transferees, it's got the two Kenyans and an Ethiopian in Dachasa, Kamis and Mahbub. So Bahrain really has been represented by a very strong team here. And Dachasa, as you said, could run really well. I mean, he's fourth in Tokyo this year, which is a similar conditions today. And he's moved to the front, so obviously he's feeling quite comfortable. Even though it's early stages, obviously we're not really at the 10K mark yet, so 32K or plus to go.
First glimpse there of Kisri, the Moroccan, 40 years of age. Hit that milestone at the beginning of this month. He's gone 2:10 this season, 2:06.48 at his best. So an interesting opportunity, as we've said all the way through. This is clearly not going to be a lightning quick race, and that means we could have unusual names featuring in the mix for the medals.
Just saw Mutai in the middle of that pack having a bit of a smile there. I think he's quite happy with the pace that's going at the moment, realising that it's not going to really hurt too early on. and that the damage, as I said, will probably come, I think, after the halfway mark, round about the 22k, maybe something like that. Silva just easing his way to the front yet again, just behind, as I said, Batature didn't really lose much there. He didn't go back through that pack and get ejected at the back. He's just easing himself again at the front.
Should just mention the 2 Japanese men in this race. I've just spotted Fujiwara. He was 14th 2 years ago in Moscow, 209.06 in Fukuoka, just at the back end of 2014, and his compatriot Kazuhiro Maida, 17th behind his compatriot in Moscow. And these conditions, as we've indicated, will really suit the 2 Japanese men. There's the back of 419, Baraki Bayen. He was 11th 2 years ago in Moscow, one of the 3 Eritreans. His 2 compatriots just slightly further up the field, one of them just tucked in behind the long loping stride of Mark Correa. There is Fujiwara. But still Chachasa pushing on the pace. Quite a strong looking athlete. He's built more like an 8 or 1500 metre runner.
He's a big boy, yeah, that's right. I mean, it's not against him really, because I mean, his body mass is a significant factor running that 42k, but he looks very comfortable. And anybody that comes from Ethiopia, you've got to expect, knows what they're doing when it comes to distance running. So he's obviously just easing himself at the front there, making sure that Bahrain gets a look on the television. De Silva just behind again on the inside. They're starting to spread out a little bit more now. Kenyans, though, in the middle there of the pack, you can just see the Korea just on the outside there in the red, the tall, long, loping stride that he's got. It's quite easy to pick up. There's the aerial shot. There's the photographers in their car just in front, and there's the camera that we get the picture of the headline picture from anyway, just ahead of them there to the right. Quite soul destroying this course really, because it's very, very long, straight, flat roads. Sometimes I know talking to marathoners, they like to be able to keep their rhythm, but at the same time they don't like to see the course stretching right out in front of them. It becomes quite a major psychological problem to sort of like try and dismiss it if you can see it stretched out in front.
Well, you know, one of the theories that's going around at the moment, I'm not sure how much weight there is in this, you'll have your own view, Steve, as Kimeto broke 2:03, the inevitable chat long term turns to the possibility one day of a sub 2 hour marathon. And there is one theory going around that perhaps one thing that would help a charge at that significant barrier would be a one straight road marathon, that perhaps you could save 20 or 30 seconds by having no corners or turns whatsoever. But surely, on the one hand, you might not lose the odd 0.5 of a second going round a corner, but as you've just indicated, that would be soul destroying. 31.51
31.51 at the 10k mark, but slightly bit faster, I think, maybe 2:13, something like that. You know, they're picking up a little bit, as you would expect. That first 5k was a bit of a ramble because they just sort of taking it easy, and we saw that fun runner taking them through. So from here on in, they're starting to pick up the rhythm a little bit, and we're coming through yet another feeding station. They will be drinking this water very, very frequently, I'm sure, during the first part of the race. Yes, getting back to that theory. Okay, well, my theory is that I would hate to run a race like that. I remember training once, I think it was in Wichita, Kansas, and I went out for I think it was a 15 mile, which was a 20k run, and I saw this thing in the distance, this looked like a black dot, and I wondered what it was, and I was running towards it, and it just didn't get any closer, and I kept running towards it, and I just couldn't work out what it was, and it was about 20k away. When I got to it, I found it was a dead cat in the road. and I think that sort of attitude, sort of to see anything in a distance so far ahead, you can't really get to it, you keep running and you can't get to it, psychologically would be a major problem for the marathon runners, I think.
Yes, just one theory. Anyway, there's confirmation to Chachasa. Sergei Batature still looking fairly comfortable, flying the flag for Mongolia. Kimeto still there, Korea still there.
Yeah, there's
Still
not much of a gap.
very big group.
Very, very close. You can see just 3 seconds separating the first, maybe 20 or so in the race. Bit of shade now, I think, from the intense heat by the trees.
The Temple of Heaven. Another tremendous piece of architecture and culture and history. No time for the sightseeing for these men. There is the first gold medal of these championships up for grabs, and Yamane Tsege just had a little casual glance right and glance left just to see who was around, and the answer is everybody. I was just double checking there that Wilson Kipsang was still in the mix, as his name wasn't listed in the top 20, but there are more than 20 athletes in that group, and he is indeed still there. So all the main contenders still right in touch, and that looked as though it might have been Ruggero Pertile heading off the front. Renunkov also putting his nose ahead. European bronze medalist last year, 2:09.54
yeah,
in
you're
Frankfurt.
right, Rob. It is Pertile just moving to the front, and his teammate just closing in behind him. There's Marucci just obviously making a move. But this is strange. I don't think the Italians would do this sort of thing. I think they've been very comfortable just waiting in the group there before they made a move at this stage. Anyway, but obviously, taking your theory that you should make a move when you feel pretty good, they're doing exactly that.
Right, not mine, it's Steve Jones's, but I just thought it was interesting, that's all. But somewhere Stefano Baldini will be watching. Brilliant major championship performer. A couple of bronze medals in the world, and then that incredible gold to match the achievements of his compatriot Gelindo Bourdin. And Baldini won in the original Olympic Stadium in 2004.
And Miucci now is just taking up the lead, I think, from his teammate there.
Plenty of green spaces in Beijing, which is not necessarily what you'd expect when you land. Very proud of their parks and all of their history and architecture.
Just a little bit on the numbers. They went through the first 5 kilometres in 16:06, and then the second 10k was reached in 21, or the 10k was reached in 31:51, 15:45. 37 men within 5 seconds. The only notable name, I think, who's off that a little bit is Ryunkov of Russia, who's 20 seconds down.
Thank you, Peter. Well, Pertile, the Italian, and his teammate there, Miucci, decided to push it on a little bit. They're spread out just behind, though. I'm just looking at it. If you look behind, none of the athletes are really suffering too much. You can usually tell the strain by looking at their faces sometimes, but they're looking pretty comfortable just behind. Kiplimo, I think, is maybe just been picked up there because he's maybe just off the back of that group.
Well, that would be a surprise if that was the case. Abraham Kiplimo, another one who's performed well in Japan and got a bronze in the Commonwealth Games last year, just ahead of his compatriot Munyo Mutai. But still the two Italians at the front, and Jeff Eggleston.
Yeah, Jeff Eggleston
just having
coming
a little
through there.
look
Yeah,
around.
the American, no, well, he's doing well. I mean, he's an exalted company here, but he's obviously feeling quite comfortable. And at this sort of pace, it would suit a lot of these athletes, really. You've got to say that the conditions, though, would be affecting them even now. Even in 37 minutes into the race, they will be feeling a little bit more tired than they would do at this stage of most normal marathons. But, yeah, the American Eggleston looking quite comfortable. It's good to see him up there at the front.
Great hopes and expectations for another American distance runner, Evan Yeager.
Oh, in the steeplechase, that's a bit later on in the
Yes.
proceedings this afternoon, isn't it?
It's this morning, the heats for the steeple.
Yep.
They've brought a stellar squad, and not just in the sprints. Their strength and depth, the Americans, is really impressive across the middle and long distances as well. Well, this is fascinating. Not necessarily what we were expecting, but still an awful lot of men in contention here, and at some stage these conditions will begin to take their toll, and when the pace increases, we can expect a fair number of this sizable group to start being spat out the back.
Got Gobu there of South Africa, just, I think, finding this pace a little bit too fast. A personal best of 2:15, so he's maybe struggling a little bit, just coming off the back. It's confirmation of the lead. The team of Italy, as we said, who's just with his teammate there, really just keeping ahead of the group. He's not pushing it on too much, I don't think, and there's no significant injection of pace. He's just at the front. Everybody on the outside there, you can see the Kenyans just loping along. Korea, Kipsang, Kimeto looking very comfortable still, as you'd expect.
There is Abraham Kapimo. Not clear from that shot whether indeed he had been dropped off the back of that group. We would expect one or two athletes to have a bad day. That is how it goes. Sometimes you wake up and you just don't feel the magic.
Well, 6.88, we just saw the back of Kipsang there. He was looking very, very comfortable. Beautiful long loping stride. Kenya's obviously not taking any water on board. They're up the right of our picture there as they went through that station where you can grab a sponge and just ease yourself. So they're not too bothered, I think, at the moment by the conditions.
Even Batochir, the early leader from Mongolia, making sure he took on board the liquid there. He missed a couple of drink stations. And good to see Jachasa. He's just towards the centre of your picture, and he's handing the drinks to his former compatriots. The expatriated Ethiopian still keeping ties with his former country. And Kapimo must have been dropped because he's running on his own here. And if indeed he is off the back of this group, this could be a very, very long day for the Ugandan Commonwealth bronze medalist.
I think he is. I think we're just seeing this is the lead group, and he's not obviously in front of that, so he's obviously dropping off the pack. I think you just see him there at the back there. Obviously the cameras and the producers really doing a good job of picking up on the fact that he is moving out the back of this field.
Another athlete, just to quickly mention, is Abdelhadi El Hashimi, the Belgian, second in Dusseldorf. Got a PB of 2:11. And he's up in this lead group. Big, powerful man, a little bit like Jachasa. He's built more like a track runner. He's wearing the distinctive dark vest with light stripes. Just glancing over his is the head between Eggleston and Meucci.
That's Lemmy. Is that Lemmy there? I think it is in the picture, yep.
Yes, just going past the Lisa de Cisa, and there is de Cisa, silver medalist 2 years ago, making sure he goes under the spray shower, doing everything they can to cool off in these ever hotter conditions. It's now 8:15 on Saturday morning here local time, and it is already very, very warm indeed.
Incredible heat at the moment. It's got to be creeping up to the mid-30s. And there's the Cisa we just said. He's looking very comfortable, just in the middle of that pack. He's taking all the advantages, Rob said. Going through the showers, grabbing the water. That's the group which, again, is coming off the back of that lead group, I think.
That's the European bronze medalist, Alexei Rayunkov. 9th in London this year, just outside 2:10.
One of the factors that we'll obviously have to look for in this race is when it comes to the sort of the last 5K or so, a lot of athletes will come through very fast because they'll be saving themselves, whereas the ones that have gone off hard will be dying. And we've seen in so many of these World Championships, Rob, the way that it changes in the last 2 or 3K, where athletes are coming on so desperately to get into the medals and others are dying and hanging on.
Yes, a lot could change in the last couple of kilometres, as you said, Steve, even more so in these conditions than would normally be the case in a marathon. 6:84 is Dennis Kimeto, the current world record holder.
There he is on the outside there, looking very, very comfortable. That long, loping stride, almost like a jog, really, for him at the moment.
Seems as though the East Africans are quite happy for the likes of Pertil and Meucci and Batochir and Eggleston just to set the pace sitting back in the pack, watching and waiting in the knowledge that there's still an awfully long way to go.
Well, they've got to think about this. It's not like a normal city race where you have to go with a pacemaker. You have to, and it's a war of attrition there. You know, literally keep going, and slowly, one by one, the men drop off the pace. Here it's not the same. Here you've got to weigh up a lot of qualities. You've got to weigh up how you feel, how the others feel, the conditions, whether or not it's the right tactical move to make a move at any stage of the race. So it's a difficult thing, and I think a lot of these athletes probably negate doing that. They wait and wait and wait as long as possible before someone else makes the move, and then they react.
Well, it'll be interesting to see what tactics are employed by the Kenyans tonight on our last event of the opening day, when they take on Mo Farah in the 10,000 metres, as we get a glimpse there of Rayunkov in that chase group. Good athlete, the Russian, but becoming detached from this lead group. As we were saying earlier in the week leading up to the championship, Steve, the East Africans have been a little bit intimidated by Mo Farah and have almost played into his hands the fact that he can run the 15 in 3:28. If they leave it late, they can't possibly match that kind of speed, but maybe the likes of Jeffrey Kamworor, the reigning world cross-country champion.
Or Paul Tanui, yes. Yeah. I mean, they're there in depth, but whether they actually have the ability or the courage to take on someone like Mo, and if Mo does win this race tonight, this 10K, it was significant in terms of the historical value, because that would mean that he has won more consecutive world titles than any other athlete in the past, and that includes the likes of Viren and Bakili. So a great race to look forward to tonight in the 10K.
It certainly is. The women's shot put final coming up tonight as well. So it's the men's marathon, the women's shot, and the men's 10,000 metres. 3 champions to be crowned on the first of 9 days of action here in Beijing.
Well, there's Fujiwara looking very good too, the Japanese athlete, just in our picture there before it moved. There he is, middle of the picture in red, looking very comfortable. And as Rob was saying, this is the sort of athlete that would do very well in these conditions.
Burrell, one of the Americans, just off the back, 2:13.26, his lifetime best.
I think Burrell's doing as best he can, really, in these conditions. 5th, 26th in the 15K at the US trials there. And looking back at his previous race, he was 6th in the Manitou Springs 10 miles. So this sort of race is pretty tough for him, but he's representing his country. I'm sure he's giving his best. But even so, just 46 or 47 minutes into the race, it's pretty tough.
Well, so we've had a couple of casualties so far. Abraham Kapimo dropping off the pace, so too the Russian Rayunkov, the European bronze medalist last year. Marius Ionescu, he's been around for such a long time. Great ambassador for Romanian distance running. European junior champion at 10,000 metres back in 2003. He's done 63.20 for the half marathon. 13th back in Daegu. That was a good performance, again, in equally tough conditions, but not so easy today for the Romanian as he drifts off the pace being set by Shumi Dechasa.
Dechasa now just pushing the rhythm a little bit more, the accelerator going down just a shade.
One of the Spaniards, Carlos Castello, just drifting off the back there. He's a 2:10 man, so one by one the casualties are beginning to mount up.
Well, you'd expect that, really. You can't expect everybody to stay together forever, especially in this sort of race with the quality of field that we've got here. Dechasa, though, I think has just pushed it a little bit. You can see now they're starting to go Indian file, and that means that there's a little bit of pressure coming on now.
Very, very strong looking athlete, Dechasa. Not too dissimilar, slightly bigger than Kenenisa Bekele.
47.48 at the 15K. That's a 57, almost a 16-minute 5K there. So the pace is about the same, not really drifting too much either way. I don't think it has to be honest. I think just keep this consistent. That's all they need to do, really. The damage will be done by the conditions more than anything else.
Yes, and then if there are still a group together towards the end, they can start having a carve up in the last 5 or 6 kilometres. So Dechasa leading. Tsege in second place. And Batochir still up there, along with
Fujiawa, I think that is.
Fujiawa.
Yeah, I think so. Just in the red there, just moving ahead. So no real sort of concern about this at the moment from the big favourites in that group, just behind, about 15, 20 metres behind there, as they come to another feeding station. Maybe that was what he was going to do. Dechasa decided to move ahead so he can get a good run at the feeding stations without having any problems with trying to grab a bottle of water.
Camera's just focusing in on Wang Zhu, 348, who's just drifting off the back of that lead group, flying the flag, and proudly so, for China. One other athlete, just to mention, from the People's Republic of Korea, Chol Pak. He's only a 2:12 man, but 2:12 is good enough for the pace they're running at the moment. He's in 5th place there.
Well,
Kipsang, Kipritich, Kimeto, Korea, the big names, Dechasa, all in the mix, but when will they start to make a move? Still, in these conditions, it's way too early for somebody to really go for it, surely.
it is tempting, isn't it, if you're feeling good, to make a move. You know, oh, it's, you know, I'm feeling good, I'll make a move now, but the real damage will be done in the second half, as I keep saying, and the others are quite rightly just hanging back here a little bit as Dechasa and Tsege move it on.
Dechasa has just closed the gap on the lead too. And interesting, just in the dynamic of the race, Tsege just looked over his shoulder there. The Kenyans, well, Korea is now just beginning to move through, but they weren't too concerned, the Kenyans there. It's the Ethiopians who are reacting to the breaks first, and then the Kenyans are almost kind of assessing and saying, okay, this is worth my energy closing the gap, or no, this one isn't going to go anywhere, I'll stay where I am.
Yeah, well, that's wise, isn't it? That's what you should do. You shouldn't really react too quickly. Just ease yourself through. And you can see there they are, just coming up. Kiprich on the outside. Just checking their watches, just looking what's going on in front. Looking around, moving to a space where they can run freely, because the long stride sometimes is a bit awkward for them, so that's why they keep out of the pack sometimes. They want to clip themselves and fall over. That's the last thing you want to do in a marathon. Going back now to that group, I think, which is falling off the back. Rukunov, as we said, Simbu, and Guerra of Spain, I think drifting now some way back as they start picking up the pace slightly.
Dechasa now taking it on. Korea is there, Kimeto is there, so too Kipsang, the Olympic bronze medalist, the former world record holder, Wilson Kipsang. He's the left-hand side of the two Kenyans, and slightly confusingly, he's wearing Kipritich on his vest, which is the same name as Stephen Kipritich. But Stephen Kipritich, of course, the defending champion, is running in the yellow vest of Uganda, as we once again focus in on the chase group. But Wilson Kipsang has come out and said this year, my priority is winning the world title. He's won so many major championship marathons, major city marathons. He's won a couple of Londons, he's held the world record, but this is the one he wants.
Yeah, he's the hot favourite, but looking back here to Beijing of Eritrea, obviously I think he may be suffering as well. They're picking up the ones that are dropping off the back. Watching, funny enough, Mark Korea there, Kenya, the tall Kenya, he's got a lovely stride, he's on his toes. Winner of the Paris Marathon, there he is, just literally just drifting along there. He doesn't look as if he's really suffering at all. His stride is almost like a middle distance runner rather than the marathon runner.
How can you run on your toes for 26 miles? That's unbelievable.
Yeah, he looks good. I mean, that's the difference, I think, sometimes with the way that the Africans run. They treat it almost like a middle distance event. It's almost getting to that stage where the pace they're running at is middle distance standard. So the group's splitting up now slightly. 3 Kenyans are there, 3 Ethiopians are there. So the big favourites grouping now at the front. Dechasa pushing it on. Coming now to around about the 1 hour. Maybe that's what they're thinking of. Just get just take the first hour slowly, just ease through, and then just see how we go from here on in.
Well, that was a significant little step up in pace there, because a gigantic group of somewhat 20 or 25 has been whittled down to about 10. Kipsang is there, so too Korea and Kimeto, all the Ethiopians, all the Kenyans. I'm just watching out to see if Stephen Kiprotich is still there, the defending champion. I just spotted Munyo Mutai towards the back of that group, and that might be Kiprotich trying to close the gap just at the back of the group, the defending champion. Athletes moving across to the left-hand side of the screen, and with good reason, making sure they're once again taking full advantage of these water stations, if not necessarily to drink, then to cool their bodies down.
Well, they're doing as much as they can, but the actual body core temperature is still going to keep rising as they go through this race.
And that is Stephen Kiprotich, 9.69, still there, but at the back of that group. Not a big enough gap to begin thinking that the defending champion is struggling, but we just need to keep our eye on that. He's running alongside Munyo Mutai, 9.72. So the defending champion, the Olympic champion, just at the back of this lead group of 10 or 11 now. So we'll just need to watch and see whether he manages to stay there or whether he's just allowing a couple of meters to grow so that he can run in comfort on his own.
Right, looking at him, he did look as if he was suffering a bit, though. I mean, I'm not doing him a disservice. He looked like he was just maybe finding it a little bit difficult, but he's still hanging in anyway. Group of about 10 now, isn't it? So we're starting to whittle down, as we said before, to the ones that will be significant when it comes to the latter part of this race.
Kiprotich is at the back of that group. Mutai is talking to him. They're exchanging some words there. Jackson Kiprop still there. Remember, Kiprop won the Mumbai Marathon 2 years ago and was 7th in the world half in scorching conditions in Kavana in Bulgaria in October 2012. So 3 Ugandans in the mix here. It's not just about the Ethiopians and the Kenyans, although they too have what looks to be a trio of representatives in this group.
But Assis is doing a good job, but he looks as if he's working hard here. I don't know whether it's for his teammate Tsege to take him on a little bit here. Maybe it's a team effort from him. We'll wait and see. Just saw there a quick glimpse of the South African, Mokgubu, who was running really well, but maybe at the moment just trying to find his rhythm in the middle of that group.
Just looking back at the last series of times we got was at 15k. I mean, they've gone through a bit further than that now, 49.38 at that point. Most of the top runners, of course, were well within touch at that time. But there was, just looking back on the whole way down the field, there were 4.5 minutes adrift of the leaders now, the men who were in 62nd, 63rd, and there were in fact 4 men even behind them.
Little bit. Well, as we approach the 1 hour mark, this is where the race proper will start to unfold. Rashid Kisri, he's been dropped by this little upsurge in pace.
Well, he's 40 years of age, struggling a little bit there, Kisri. Just dropping off as the rhythm increases, and you'd expect that, really. Long straight roads here. It really is soul destroying, it really is. And they're running on the other side, which is not getting the best shade, really. They should move across really to the other side, because they might get a little respite from this intense heat, but they don't seem to be too bothered by it, really. Just see there, Kenya's just keeping a check of who's dropping off the back.
And that's how quickly the group has split. There are around, what, 12 or 13 athletes still in that group, but it's far, far smaller than it was before. And you can just see the two Italians still running side by side, Meucci and Pertile, just on the left, now out of shot. They were helping the early pace setting, but they're now back in around 17th and 18th, still running together.
Just a quick shot there, wasn't it, at the Kumyu River? So they're coming up maybe to about the hour mark or so, which is bringing them just before the Hamden Park area, where this is the halfway mark. So yeah, this is, I suppose, a significant point of the race. There's the river just behind them. Good shot of the runners from the back there. So you can generally tell by the gait whether someone's suffering or not, but they all seem to be pretty good.
Stephen Kiprich, the defending champion, still in that group, still at the back of the group, but he's in touch. There he is, 969.
Yeah, I was going to say, there he is. Going across maybe to the shade there. I'm not sure what he's doing. He had a quick word with his teammates, didn't he, at one stage there, and said almost move up, get up at the front. And they just having a quick chat with each other.
Adam Karmis, world junior bronze medalist back in 2006, over 10,000 metres. Athlete of real calibre.
Well, he's transferred to Bahrain, but he's still been issued with a Kenyan passport, so almost dual citizenship for him. He could literally flick backwards and forwards, but if you're in Kenya, I suppose you take the easy option, don't you, and try and run for a team that will give you a place in these championships.
Well, good to see the Ugandans at the front. Stephen Kiprich no longer at the back of that group. He's at the front, alongside his compatriot Jackson Kiprop. 7.24, incidentally, is Sepo Matibel from Lesotho. He's got a best of 2:16.21, and he's on course to absolutely annihilate that at the moment. But, and it is a big but, there's still more than an hour to go in these brutal, ever worsening conditions. It is absolutely roasting here in Beijing, and we are just gone 8:30 in the morning.
Well, I just saw Pertil, the Italian, take the lead again, but we're switching back now to No of Korea, who I think another one of these athletes that's finding this pace a little bit too hard now. There's Pertil. Again, the Italians pushing the pace on there. They're not happy to sit in that group. They want to keep the rhythm going. He's dropping his arms a little bit. And there's Meucci, his teammate, coming to him, give him a bit of a hand. So good on the Italians.
Well, that's interesting, because not 5 minutes or so ago, they were off the pace in about 16th or 17th. Obviously deciding to get back in amongst the mix.
Well, not in amongst the mix. They're actually starting to push the pace on somewhat here. The other athletes, I think, are just looking at the fact that they've suddenly come from nowhere and started to move the pace. Meucci now pushing hard. This is just over the hour, though. Is this a wise move, or is this the only move they've got?
Is it the Steve Jones philosophy again? Maybe they had a word with each other and said, I'm feeling good, let's crack on.
No idea, but they're moving through. Look, this is a good bit of push on by Meucci here. Glad to see they've moved across to the shady part of the road.
The second of the Japanese athletes there, Kazuhiro Maida, who was 4th in Otsi back in March, 17th in the marathon in Moscow, and incidentally 17th in the 10,000 metres, a brutal 10,000 metres in Osaka on home soil back in 2007.
Wow, bit of a move from Meucci here. Whether this is a significant move, or he just feels that he's feeling good, as Rob said, and just wants to make the best of it, I don't know. But the other athletes, I think, weighed him up as he went past and thought, well, no big danger, but he's got to be careful.
Well, he's the European champion. He was 19th in the 10,000 metres 2 years ago, so he's clearly got good speed endurance, the Italian. Well, interesting development.
There's the 20k mark, picking up the pace now, 15:35, so they've dropped about 20 seconds on this 5k. But again, it will bring us into what sort of time, I think, Rob? Around about the 2:13, I think, something like that?
Yeah, it's still pretty steady, to be honest, but that injection of pace over the last 5k explains why so many of that group have been dropped. But this is a very, very confident piece of front running from the European champion. And interesting to see, for the first time, Tachasa has gone ahead of Meucci's compatriot Ruggero Pertil, and maybe just deciding that the Italian has some pedigree in major championship marathons, albeit at a European level, and that he's looking good enough to warrant closing down. So Tachasa has given chase. He still looks pretty comfortable though, Meucci, doesn't he?
Yeah, he's looking good. I mean, the Italians have a great tradition in performing well at major championships at marathons, so you know, if they've got a chance here, Meucci thinks he's in with it, then he's going to take whatever opportunity he has.
Fabiano Joseph in that chase group. As we look at Meucci taking on board his own specific liquids in the red bottle in his left hand, and then the water over the top of the head in the right.
Just looking back through the history, he's the only other Italian to win a medal, I think, was Vincenzo Modica back in 1999 when he finished in second place. So history is there.
Well, he'll be joining not only him but also the likes of Stefano Baldini, who's finished on the podium, and Gelindo Bourdin never won the World Championship Marathon, the Olympic champion in 1988, but he did finish on the podium. So Bourdin, Baldini, great Italian distance runners from over the years. And actually, if you look back at the history books on the track as well, the Italians had a big impact. Alberto Cova winning that 5-way sprint for the line in Helsinki in 1983. I think it was 5 athletes in 28:01. His winning margin was something like 0.1 of a second. So the Italians have got a great history when it comes to the World Championships.
Keeping up with the splits, we've been through 20k, of course, now. 63 minutes 23, so that's a little short of halfway. And we've had a very level pace indeed. 15:45 the last 5k, after 15:47, 15:45 and the 16:06 opener. And at that stage, there were 22 men within 10 seconds, but then the gap's really opening up.
Well, I think that Peter's right. There's not been much change in the pace, but the actual effort needed to keep that pace going has been significant, I think.
And once again, the two Italians finding themselves at the front. Munyo Mutai is there in that lead group, just glancing over. He's running on the left-hand side, glancing left, glancing right. And Stephen Kipritich, the defending champion, still looking fairly comfortable in that group. And look at the three Kenyans on the right of picture, now centre frame, all of them looking at their watches, all of them looking comfortable, and none of them getting too involved in what's going on at the front. Quite happy to sit there at the back of that group, ready and waiting to pounce.
Just previous to that, I think we saw a quick shot of Eggleston there, the American, just disappearing off the back as the pace increases. So finding it very difficult as the two Italians yet again keep injecting these little rhythms of or little spurts of increasing in pace. Pertil now doing his job. Meucci we just saw previous to that. They're not happy to run at the rhythm that the others are dictating. There's Eggleston, I think it is, yeah, just slightly finding this rhythm now, a little bit too much. He's still running well. Perhaps just halfway for him in the marathon at the moment.
Well, now we get into the race proper, and this is where it starts to get very interesting indeed.
Well, it's all go out there though on the the heat and the intolerable conditions that we've got here for the men in the marathon. We haven't mentioned this man before, have we? Abraham here of Switzerland, the ex-Eritrean, now looking very comfortable. He's suddenly come through there and just making his move, I suppose. He's looking very comfortable. Some of them we haven't seen much up until now.
Interesting you pointed him out. He ran well in Seoul recently in very humid conditions. He's won the Zurich Marathon a couple of times in his adopted country. 9th in the Europeans last year, but a pretty good half marathon PB, 60:42. So Tadesse Abraham, the expatriated Ethiopian, cannot be ruled out, but still Proteus determined to set the pace and the rhythm here at the front. Around about an hour of running, just over still to go, even if there's a little bit of an injection of pace. But how significant, Steve, none of the three Kenyans have been interested in this pace at all. The world record holder, the Olympic bronze medalist, the winner of this year's Paris Marathon, all three right there, but not interested in poking their noses out in front. Perhaps they sense the real hard graft is still to come.
Yeah, you can see, I mean, look at Eggleston, he's suffering now. And these are class athletes. But Teal still working hard in front at this stage of the race. This is a good, good effort from him. He's pushing everything he's got into the World Championships, and it's a good move, trying to run as hard as you possibly can. You don't have any regrets after a race if you do that. And that's exactly what he's doing. As you said, the three Kenyans keep checking their watches, I think, Rob. They're checking their watches, watching the distance, watching their time. They're just biding their time at the moment, quite happy, watching everybody make a move, come back, make a move, come back. Not toying with the field as such, but quite content, I think, to do what they have to do with as little effort as possible.
Yes, still a long way to go. And I wonder if Stefano Baldini is watching this race. Bronze medalist in Edmonton and in Paris. Bourdin got a bronze for Italy in 1987 behind Douglas Wakihuri. They ended up first and second in Seoul rather, in 1988 in the Olympics. Proteus looking over his shoulder, and almost all of the big names are still in touch in that group. But they're quite content to let him go as we look at Eggleston grinding through the gears here.
Yeah, this is tough, isn't it, when you get to this stage like that? You know you're out of the contention. It's getting hard, and you've still got half the marathon to go. Well, Patil's doing a good job. Mayuchi, his teammate, again, just behind him, easing himself to the front of that group. We'll have to wait and see whether he's still there, but he's working hard. But the gap never more than, say, 15 metres or so. There's Mayuchi just behind. They just got him on the string at the moment. They're just letting him go so far, but not too far.
Yeah, you get the impression with the little effort, seemingly little effort, that the three Kenyans have had to produce so far. You get the feeling if this was maybe a different athlete at the front, the long strides would extend and very quickly the gap would be reduced. But let's take nothing away from the Italian. He's really going for it as Fujiwara perhaps now begins to show the effects of the heat and humidity for so long in that group, and now he's off the back.
You just see that little red figure there, Fujiwara just coming off the back now, as Patil still seems to push it harder and harder. But it's the work rate, isn't it? You watch someone like Patil, his work rate is quite significant. He's working hard, whereas you look back to the Kenyans, they're drifting. They're not into that area where they're working hard at the moment. They're just taking their time. So too the Ugandans, and so too the Ethiopians. This is a different way of running. This is a relaxed way of running, whereas Patil is working hard. You can see, so too Mayuchi just behind. That's not to say they might not win, but it's to say that they're putting more effort in at the moment to do so.
Well, they must have spoken about this morning, and in the week leading up to this marathon, they must have decided if it was fairly slow, if all the athletes were respecting the conditions, that they would take it on, they would try and break it up, and they would have a go at taking the race to the East Africans And it's actually great to see European athletes brave enough and bold enough to do this.
Yeah, I think this is very courageous. No question about that. Both these two men are trying hard here. And they know the opposition. They know what standard is behind them. You know, it's not as if they're trying to break away from a normal field. This is a world-class field they're trying to break. So give them credit. They're doing the best they can. And to a certain extent, they're doing the job. Dropping his arms down. I think he's feeling tired. Maybe the idea is to try and get a big enough gap that it almost falls the rest of the field. And they sneak the win, as it were. But I'm not sure that that's capable, really, with the colour behind it, really. To wait and see.
Well, especially with the likes of Kimeto and Kipsang, perhaps sacrificing what could be a huge payday in the autumn, going for a race such as Amsterdam or New York with a massive payday guaranteed irrespective of finish. Not opting for that, the two Kenyans. They're opting for glory.
Well, Patil just looked over his right shoulder there, and there was his teammate, Mayuchi. I wonder if they have a few words. Are they having a few words? No, I think Mayuchi's just moving to the front now to do his job. Well, if they're watching this back, as Rob said, in Italy, they must be pleased with the way their men are taking it to the rest of the field at the moment.
And actually, as they do look round, they have actually opened up a little bit of an increase in that gap. 7 seconds, eminently bridgeable, of course, as far as the rest of the world-class field are concerned. But this is superb to see from the Italians, really going for it here in the most brutal and testing of conditions. And look at the calibre of athletes in this chase group. Totally intimidated, the two Europeans. But can they keep it going? That is the huge, huge question.
Well, the good thing about the course is you can actually see them. I mean, there's no bends where they can disappear and you don't know how far they're going, which is a disadvantage for the Italians because, you know, if you do that, every time you go round a curve, you maybe sneak another 3 or 4 metres or so, and then, you know, look up. Before you know it, there's a gap maybe of 200 metres rather than 50.
Does that work from an athlete's perspective? If you know, I know it's a little bit of a trodden cliche, but if you go round a corner, if you're the chase athlete or you're in a chase group, if you do get round the corner and you think, hang on a minute, this has increased, does it chip away at that belief?
I think it must do. If anybody starts moving away, and we see now Mayuchi starting to do the same thing, if he starts moving away and it starts going away, and you've got nothing in the tank, then you start thinking, well, this is a major problem here. But it's not going to be the case, I don't think, with the chasing group here. I think they just know that they're going to wait until a certain point in the race before they start really piling on the pressure. And these two at the moment are trying to do quite the opposite. They're trying to get away before that actually happens. So it's a game of chess really here, really, a mental chess game between these two. These two, the Italians, have obviously decided before the race they're going to try and make their break before any significant move comes from the Africans in the last part of the race. And by doing so, hopefully get a big enough gap that the chase won't catch them.
Well, it's a brutal way to try and win a marathon or win a medal, but all credit to them. But we do have to remember that on the pace that these guys are running at the moment, there is still the best part of 55 or 54 minutes of running to go.
Yeah. But that's the great thing about championship races, isn't it? It's not just a city marathon where they go out with pacemakers and that right from the word go, you know almost who's going to be 1, 2 and 3 because it's the favourites that actually chase the pacemaker. Here you've got all sorts of things going on here. The Italians throwing things down, the Africans vying for each other, deciding, you know, looking at each other, whether the Kenyans are going to make a move, whether the Ethiopians are going to make a move, whether the Ugandans are going to make a move. And they're watching each other. And sometimes by watching each other, you miss out on the rabbit in front. And that's what the Italians, I think, are gambling on.
.224, El Hashimi, the Belgian, still in touch in that group, just at the back. And just talking about the body language of the two Italians, I've noticed Pertil tends to just lean a little bit to his right-hand side. Mayuchi, however, still looks very, very strong and very comfortable. The European champion, a really lovely athlete to watch in terms of his rhythm and his technique.
Well, they must know before the race that it's going to be running a reasonable time here. You know, not to the world record pace, but at a reasonable time. And once it gets to that sort of area of capability, then there is a chance that you could win it. And this is what these guys are doing. They're realising that it's not going to be a 2:2 marathon. It's going to be a 2:10 or a 2:12 or maybe just slightly quicker. And that's in their area of capability. And they can do that if they can cope with the conditions. And maybe that's what they're thinking at the moment. I'm still in with a chance.
Well, Mayuchi is a 2:11 man, the European champion. He does have good track speed, finishing in the top 20 in the 10,000 metres.
Well, they've just passed through the 25-kilometre point, as we just saw that sort of tower across them. They went through that in 1 hour 19:16, and that means that the last 5K have in fact slowed up a little bit, 15:53, and yet the gaps have increased, and that really is testimony to what Steve was talking about before, how it really is trying on these athletes now. They are slowing up.
Well, that's probably why these two have got ahead. They realise that the pace is slowing up. They just want to keep it going. And by doing so, they've got this little gap. It's a great double picture of the two Italians.
Interesting to see the wire through the top of Pertiel's drink to make it as easy as possible to hook it up on your arm and make sure you don't miss your own specific liquids.
Well, it looks as if it's just water because I wouldn't be pouring anything sugar over my head at this stage of the race. But there's a great picture of the Bird's Nest Stadium. That's the finish of the race.
Meanwhile, back with the marathon, still Pertiel leading Sege and Desisa, just looking around to see which of the Kenyans are still in contention. Wilson Kipsang, 6:88, is tracking the move of the Italian. Starting to get towards the race proper now. There's one of the supporters, or maybe just a fan of the Ugandan team. 972, Munyumutai, still right there in the group, and no move as yet from Shumi Jachasa, but he's still right there, and I wonder whether one or two of the Kenyans are just beginning to disappear. Sometimes difficult to tell from this angle, but we'll keep our eye out and see if we can spot Kimeto and Korea. And I think there may only be Wilson Kipsang from the Ethiopian trio in that group. He's towards the back, the long loping stride, and there's some real pain being endured by these athletes here. 9:69 is Stephen Kipritich, the defending champion. He's still there running beside Munyo Mutai. But Dennis Kimeto, the current world record holder, looks to me as though he's not in that lead group, and neither is Mark Correa, the winner of the Paris Marathon earlier this year. So Wilson Kipsang is the solo Kenyan in that group. So that's the biggest news we've had since we disappeared a few moments ago to show you the first of those 4 heats in the women's heptathlon. The pace and the conditions are beginning to take their toll, and not just on the Europeans and North Americans, on the might of East Africa as well. 4:68 is Bahano Lemi, won Dubai at the start of this year, and still in the mix there. A great performance from Seppo Matibel, the athlete from Lesotho. He's on course to absolutely annihilate this PB. Remember, I was mentioning he's a 2:16 man. He's running in second place, 7:24, and you can tell he wasn't one of the fancied athletes because he wasn't given his name on his vest, simply the number. So it's Italy from Lesotho, with Mayuchi, the European champion, still in third place. And what odds would you have got on that combination for first and second with an hour and a half on the clock, with such quality elsewhere in this race? But the Kenyans are struggling.
We'll give them credit. They're doing a damage to the Africans here, these two Italians, and Pertiel in particular is doing a real job of work out there in front in the race so far. Conditions, as we said, are appalling really for the marathon. Perfect for the sprints here in the stadium. But the Italians are working hard, and they're doing what they have to do to break this stronghold that the Africans have had on the marathon for so long.
Well, if this is a glimpse at the front, and it does indeed look as though it is, because we can't see any other athletes ahead of him, this is an incredible injection of pace.
Yeah, he's just gone through 30 kilometres, 1:35.02, and 15:38 last 5K.
Wow.
and no one else has gone through there yet.
15:38, he's injecting, a 30-second differential here in the 5K. That's why he's getting this gap. But Teal, the Italian, though, is trying to close the gap. You can see, though, that's a big move.
Well, fascinating developments. He's a little bit ragged. He's left to right. And we do need to remind ourselves, with only 1:37 having been run, there is an awful long way to go here. But look at his leg turnover, Steve. This is insane.
Yeah, he's really pushing on. Whether he can maintain this sort of rhythm is a big question mark, really, as you said. But he is making an effort, whether it's inexperience or whether it's just sheer exuberation that he's feeling great and he's moving well. You can see his head's rolling a little bit. Whether this is a comfortable stride pattern, I don't know. But Per Teal has realised that he's got to go after him. This is a significant move, and they've got to counter. Per Teal, though, he's always been up there, hasn't he? He's always looked good. He's always tried his best. He's always pushed on. He keeps glancing over his shoulder, I think, to see whether his teammate is still there. Marucci, though, is in that group just behind him. Wow, look at this. He really has shot ahead. 200, 300 metres in that space when we were just watching that heat of the heptathlon hurdles.
Well, Steve, can you remember seeing a lead like this from an athlete as unfancied as this in a World Championship marathon before? This is extraordinary. Well, the interesting thing about that race is that the three Kenyans look really cool, calm, collected and easy, and then Mark Correa drifted off the back, the Paris Marathon winner from earlier this year. Then so too Dennis Kimeto, as you've indicated, Peter, the world record holder, smashed his way to the title in Berlin last year, but it's still Germe Gebrselassie of Eritrea in the lead, and there he is. Well, and we have Yerenet Sege in second place.
I was going to say, Sege is closing, though, and he's closing fast. But Gebrselassie, as we saw, he actually paced the Chicago Marathon for 35k. And so he's used to running hard for 35k, but he's got a little bit longer to go here in this marathon. But he's done well. He really has.
Well, Steve, when you consider that the man leading at the moment, well, I say man, he's a boy. He's only 19 years of age. Extraordinary to have such a pedigree already. 6th in Chicago, 7th in the World Half Marathon Championships last year. But look at Yamane Tsege. He was 4th in Berlin 6 years ago. He's breathing, he's puffing, he's panting. He's in second place, and he's not too far behind the Ethiopian. And he will remember the fact that he missed out on a bronze medal in Germany by just 7 seconds. So it's Gebrselassie of Eritrea, not the Haile. He's retired, the Ethiopian, or is doing later this year, certainly as far as major championships is concerned. Gebrselassie of Eritrea leading. Tsege of Ethiopia is in second place. And I think, judging by the pictures, there's a battle royal going on for third.
But it doesn't involve the Kenyans, and I can tell you at the last checkpoint, the top Kenyan, believe it or not, was Mark Correa in 21st place.
Well, that's amazing. I mean, everybody before this race thought the Kenyans would dominate, but actually they're suffering more than most. So, Gebrselassie, as Rob said, shot to the front there at one stage and almost had a 200-metre lead. But Tsege of Ethiopia is closing fast just behind him. There he is, he's looking around. Tsege just coming into the picture now. Now, whether these two will run together for a while or not is the big question mark. I think Tsege is trying his hardest. He was literally overstriding to catch up Gebrselassie. And Gebrselassie, though, looks very comfortable. He doesn't look as if he's struggling, but he looks as if the gap is closing. But look behind, Tsege doesn't look happy.
Both of them continually looking behind, and Steve, don't they realise every time you do that, not only do you send a message to your rival, but your momentum turns backwards as well, and you lose the odd 1/10 of a second.
Yeah, but I think, Rob, going through their minds, they're thinking that there's some great runners behind, and they just want to make sure that they're going away from them. That's the main thing. I think they're just concentrating on the fact that they can't believe, I think some of them, that they're actually pulling away from some of the greatest marathon runners of all time very easily over this last part of the race.
Now, it is a Ugandan in third place, but I don't necessarily think it's Stephen Kipritich, the defending champion. He's having a good run, Kipritich, but I think he's back in fourth or fifth.
Mutai. It's Mutai, I think, that's up there at the moment. And he's a drift of about 100 metres behind those two at the moment. There he is, just out of the picture. But these two now are running together a little bit. And that's good, because they've got to keep the rhythm going without tiring or trying to be too much battling at this stage of the race.
Well, there's huge motivation for both men here, arguably slightly more for Yamane Tsege, missing out on a medal in 2009. He is genuinely world class. He won Rotterdam in 2012 in a really, really quick time. He's got a cracking personal best, 2:04.48, so he's inside 2:05 at his very best. And he's got the teenager, Germe Gebrselassie, for company. Chopping and changing the two of them. Mungo Mutai is having a great run in third place. He too knows what it feels like to miss out on a major championship bronze, because he finished just 3 seconds off the podium last year in Glasgow in the Commonwealth Games. He's in third with Stephen Kiprotich having a good run, but at the moment today out of the medals, having won the last two global major titles. And there for the first time, Steve, with 2 hours on the clock, the bird's nest is homing into view.
Well, I don't know whether they caught a glimpse of that. It must be welcome relief. But Gebrselassie, as we said before, just 19 years of age. He actually, reading his biography, he actually went against his father's wishes, or his parents' wishes, to become an international runner. They wanted him to attend university. Well, looking at the way he's doing at the moment, he's doing a very good job of appeasing his father, I think, or his parents, because this is a fantastic run here in the World Championships. It really is.
Well, he's already come sixth in Chicago. He's one of the fastest juniors in history, seventh in the world half. He could probably retire in 3 years' time with a global medal. Maybe a global title. We shall see.
Well, Sergei called him up, but I think he took a lot out of himself to do that. Out of the two, I would say that Gebrselassie looks more comfortable. But these two at the moment, there's that gap of about, hundreds or so metres on Mutai, just behind them.
This is great. Side by side, no quarter asked, no quarter given. And as you say, perhaps Tsege just lost a little bit of energy in his attempt to close the gap. The 30-year-old Ethiopian is grimacing a little bit. You could argue he's looking ever so slightly more uncomfortable than his Eritrean rival. And there's history here for the Eritrean. They've only won one medal, as we look at Mutai, the Ugandan, in third place, being roared on by his support staff there on the bike.
That just shows you how fast they're going,
I was just going to say that. You get an indication as to how quick they are. So Mutai, going through some tough times here, just needs to hang on.
Yeah, he does need to hang on. The gap slightly, I think, lengthening just behind Mutai. I think there might be another chase on. We'll have to wait and see who that is coming through. But you can see that Gebrselassie, though, has decided to push it on yet again. And he's a little gap here, between him maybe. Yes, there is. He's starting to push it on a bit more. Mutai, there it is, that relaxed rhythm. He's not tiring, I don't think, Mutai, but he's not actually picking it up significantly to close the gap. That's the most important factor. Gebrselassie pushing on yet again.
He's got a big gap, Mutai, ahead of fourth and fifth, and both of them looking over their shoulders again.
I think that was significant for Sergei. He's almost given up, I think, and if Gebrselassie can keep this rhythm going, he's going to break the man behind.
Well, let's just talk about the history of Eritrean distance running. There's one name that repeatedly turns up as far as the history books are concerned, and that's the name Zerzane Tadesse, the first Eritrean Olympic medalist, got a bronze behind Kenenisa in Athens in 2004. He's also claimed, so far, the only Eritrean World Championship medal. He got a silver, once again, behind Kenenisa Bekele in Berlin. They've never won a World Championship gold. And look at how the 19-year-old is stripping distance away from the hugely experienced Ethiopian in second place. What a story this would be for the entire country if Gebrselassie is able to come home with Eritrea's first gold medal whilst still a teenager.
He looks good. He looks good, and I think he knows he looks good. That's the thing. Tadesse behind, you can see he's trying again. He's pushing hard. The gap is opening up, though. I think he looked back in desperation just a few minutes ago to see where the others were, and I think he knows if he's just got to hold it now for this second place if he can. But the charge will come on. There's still a lot of racing to go, and he's looking again. Where are you? Am I still clear? But you can see behind, athletes are closing. This is what I said about the last part of this marathon. In these conditions, athletes die hard and they come strong at the finish. Things can change in the last few minutes. It's not over yet. Mutai, I think, is in his rhythm. I don't think he's got much left in that tank. He's doing the best he can to hang on for third.
Great run, though, from the Ugandan. Remember missing out on a medal last year in Glasgow by just 3 seconds. Well, bear in mind in this race, we started with the world record holder, the former world record holder, and the reigning world and Olympic champion, and it looks very much, barring an attack of cramp, as though none of the three of them are going to end up on the podium. It's been a race that's been turned on its head, and at the moment, as Mutai continues to get that support, and now the guy on the bike has drifted off, he wants to get in the stadium to see Mutai hopefully finish the race on the podium in third place. But it looks as though it's a teenager who is going to take the honours here. Incredible maturity and stamina for one so young. I mean, the traditional route, Steve, into marathons is these gnarled guys of 30 and 32 having hammered themselves and worked speed into their legs after years and years of 5 and 10,000 metre running on the track. Guys like Gabriel Selassie are turning those traditional routes upside down and inside out.
They are, but the thing is that this is a competitive race. This isn't a major city race where it's full on from the gun. This is a competitive situation, man against man. Tactics come into it, conditions come into it, and I think this is where people like Gabriel Selassie here can really make a name for themselves. They might not be able to run the 2 hour 2 minute marathons, but they can win championships. They can come forward and win the gold medals.
Looking back over his shoulder again, but you would suspect from the body language of Yemane Tsege, you suspect the Ethiopian has settled for second place. 2:05 at 40k, so they're still, well, what, 2:12, 2:13 pace?
Yeah, but the significance was that split again, wasn't it? 15:02.
Yeah, that's the difference. That's the damage. He's running faster now over this last 5k than perhaps any stage of the race. So that's why he's pulling away and he's making everybody else disappear into the distance.
Well, somewhere, hopefully, the legendary Zerzane Tadesse is watching and cheering and celebrating, kissing his water bottle. Gabriel Selassie doing it once and twice. Gabriel Selassie, the Eritrean teenager, knows in his mind that this race and this title is absolutely wrapped up. What an extraordinary performance from a 19-year-old. I know we keep stressing that, but this is incredible in an event so hard, in conditions so brutal. This has been a real demonstration of strength and class.
Yeah, it's been a great run. I mean, it has. We keep using that phrase in marathon. It's been a war of attrition, really. And the conditions here have been absolutely incredible. 35-degree heat all the way through this race. They put it on early in the morning at 7:30, but it really didn't make any difference at all. It's been warm through the evening previous to the race, and then it's just been heating up all the way through. Mutai doing his best, taking on as much water as he can. The gap's still the same. The camera angle foreshortening it, I think. Gabriel Selassie, though, is looking very comfortable. Doesn't know which way to go.
Oh, this is incredible. Slowing down, he's not sure. He's got to maintain his focus here. Just perhaps there showing a little bit of his inexperience. I thought for one awful moment there he was actually going to stop.
Well, he's looking around. Just follow that camera in front, really. That's all he's got to do. And keep looking into it and keep running well, and he'll win the gold.
He must know, he must have studied the course, he must know that the race is finishing in the stadium.
Well, there's a little bit behind him, though. There's a little bit of confusion. There are 1 or 2 areas where you can drift off into another section of the course because of the barriers, and I think he got confused there. But I think now he realised he's just got to follow the lead car all the way through until he gets to the stadium.
There's Mutai.
But look at the gap behind Mutai. There's no one there that I can see behind him. And that's a good long road of about 200 or 300 metres or so.
And I just wonder with Mutai in third place whether his comfort in tough conditions has come into the fore, as Gabriel Selassie now has a full, and what will be from his perspective, a wonderful view of the Bird's Nest Stadium. Just filling up here now, and he will get a massive reception from the crowd.
Well, there's the splits at the 40k. He's got that 12-second gap on to Sergei, and Mutai 39 seconds back. But look at the gap between Mutai and the chase, over a minute behind him. Great run, it really is. I know Rob keeps saying he's just 19 and it is inexperienced, but he's come good here today, hasn't he, really?
Well, we've just been talking. Peter Matthews alongside me has been furiously working through the stats books to find out how many, if any, younger champions there've been in World Championship history. 19's pretty close to the top, surely, in terms of the youngest.
Well, there've been some young ones at different events, but he's by 2 years the youngest ever marathon winner. Okay, that was 2 years youngest medalist ahead of Lalisa of Ethiopia, and the previous gold medalist, 23-22. I mean, the youngest individual champion is the woman, Tirunesh Dibaba, at 17.
Of course,
and
from 03.
There have been a number of teenagers at various disciplines, but the marathon is not usually thought of as an event for teenagers, which is the point you're making. And he is by 2 years the youngest ever marathon world championship medalist, and almost 4 years the youngest gold medalist.
Well, he's actually now, this is the course for the walks, he's actually now coming around the bend, and there's the bird nest right in front of him. He's up on the scoreboard in about 4 or 6 massive screens here in the stadium, and there's a big crowd here actually for the event, and when he comes into the stadium I think they will go absolutely ballistic. This is a great run from a youngster, it really is.
Well, I'm looking forward to seeing his celebrations. We've already seen him getting excited, kissing his water bottle twice. I think we might see some exuberance from the teenager when he enters the stadium and gets that little rush of adrenaline.
Remember that he hasn't just defeated any field, he's probably defeated one of the best fields assembled at a World Championships. 5
of the 6 fastest men in the world this year were on the start line, and I wonder what odds you would have got on Gabri Selassie coming away as the champion. Great run for Sergei after just missing out agonisingly in Berlin 6 years ago, but I think closing the gap as quickly as he did on Gabri Selassie really hurt him.
Yeah.
And I think the Eritrean sensed that, which is why he put in another injection of pace, and as soon as he did that on that second occasion, the Ethiopian had no response.
Well, that is maturity within itself, the ability to sense that someone's come up to you and they're tired, because when someone usually comes up to you they go past you, and that's when the problems start. But he realised that Sergei was tiring coming up to him, and as soon as he did, he looked at him and kicked again.
Well, great stories on all 3 of our medalists, and I think we can start referring to them as the medalists.
Yep.
He's still unsure where to go. Just get into the shadow and emerge to the triumphant cheers of the crowd. He keeps looking behind, but his lead is enormous. Sergei isn't even in sight. And this is a moment and a feeling reserved for only those he-men and women who come and conquer at 26.2 miles. He will have the luxury of the applause of an entire stadium, as well as the plaudits from an entire nation back home.
Oh, he's loving it, isn't he? Look, he's loving it.
I told you it would be exuberant.
Oh, look, he's carrying the flag, and they're absolutely on their feet. What a performance from this youngster. He's got the flag. He's coming down the straight now. He's got to do another lap. I hope he realises he's got to do another lap. It's a great run from him, really.
Amazing performance from one so young. He is the 6th fastest junior in history, and he is the world champion. What a performance. Yamane Sergei coming into the stadium in 2nd place. He's not sure which way to go. Keep going. Remember, this man finished 4th in the World Championships in Berlin, and Mutai finished 4th in the Commonwealths last year. Sergei is absolutely exhausted. It's a salute for the Ethiopians in the crowd, and at last he is on the major championship podium. Silver for Sergei, and already into the stadium is Munyo Mutai. The heartache of missing out by 3 seconds at the Commonwealth Games turns to delight in 2015. He is the World Championship bronze medalist, and he's done that with real class.
Well, I think the athletes as well as us were confused whether they had to do another lap, really. and they literally just had to cross the line. No one was there to tell them to stop or to take it easy, so there was a bit of confusion there, and I think they're more than happy not to have to run another lap around the track, to be honest. Nevertheless, winning time though, what a performance. 2 hours, 12:28. It's not the world records that we see in city races, but nonetheless, a fabulous race to watch.
That is one of the great performances. Eritrea's first World Championship title. Mutai just about breaking into a jog, 2:13.29. Getting on the podium, continuing the tradition of his illustrious compatriot, Stephen Kipritich. He's got the bronze as the fourth placed athlete comes into the stadium. A great run from the Italian. Brilliant performance there. They were right in the mix. It's Ruggero Pertil who's come home in fourth. Good run from him. Season's best 2:14.22. Tachata coming home. And there's Stephen Kipritich, not defending his title this time. Shumi was fifth. Kipritich absolutely exhausted. Some big cheers.
Well, they still think there's a lap to go here, some of these athletes, and they're running around, but it's not. Unfortunately, they realise now as they come to the high jump fan, where most of the heptathletes are just lining up, that there's not a lap to go. I'm not surprised really that there isn't anybody to stop the athletes really at the finish there to tell them that it's all over. Bit of confusion really.
Well, not one of them has known that that's the finish, and here's another, the third Ugandan. What a triumph for Uganda it must have been. And he's still heading round, and he's gone past the high jumpers. No, he's stopped now. But once again, East African domination, and yet no Kenyans. We had 3 different East African countries getting the medals.
Yeah, and they had such pedigree here coming into the race as well. They'll be bitterly disappointed. And actually, that's the second World Championship marathon in a row where the Kenyans have not taken an individual medal. It was Kipritich, Desisa and Tola in first, second and third in 2013. But today belonged to Gabri Selassie, Germe, not Haile, an Eritrean, not an Ethiopian, 19 years of age, and he is already a world champion. How many more accolades will come to this incredibly mature young man? He ran that with such style, and there was an awful lot left had he needed it in the last few hundred metres. He made the climax of that race look easy in brutal conditions. Sergei saluted the Ethiopians in the crowd, delighted to upgrade fourth from Berlin to second here in Beijing. And then it was Munyo Mutai who completed the podium. Another medal for the Ugandans, but this time it wasn't Kipritich, their former champion. It was Munyo Mutai. What a race and what a climax for the 3 East African nations. Mutai with the bronze, and no doubt there'll be some great celebrations, and I'm sure he'll be congratulated warmly by his compatriot, the Olympic champion Stephen Kipritich. There's the first gold, silver and bronze of the 2015 World Championship, and it's the teenager Gabri Selassie who's come out on top for Eritrea.
Well, there's some weary athletes coming in today from that marathon. I'm not surprised.
There's De Silva.
I was going to say, that looks like De Silva coming there, the early leaders of the race, but suffering over that last half. Great picture there of the medalists as they do their lap of honour. This time they will do a lap around the track, but with their flags rather than during the race.
Former European medalist there. Rununkov absolutely exhausted the Russian, but there's the lap of honour, and they can always find the energy for that. Great celebrations for all 3 of them. Eritrea's first World Championship title